Recording. Yes, recording. Awesome. Well, thank you. Welcome to everyone. This is our November career conversations for the data analytics and the food, agricultural, natural resources, and human sciences project. As a reminder, Isabel is adding the registration link in the chat if you haven't had a chance to do so. There's also a pre-survey that we would appreciate you taking 2 minutes to fill out before we get started. I'm super happy to welcome Bryan Castro to come talk with us today. He is a health program and research associate at the National Alliance for Hispanic Health in Washington. So we appreciate you spending part of your afternoon with us. One of the things that we're hoping to learn and share with the students is how you got to the career you're at, especially some significant aspects of your career, how you use and learn from data on a hopefully day-to-day basis. Advice for students at various parts of their academic path. Some of the students are undergrads, some are grad students. We've got students from San Bernardino State and from San Bernardino. So floor is yours, Bryan. If you want to kind of give that intro, and love to hear from you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Donatello, and also thank you, Dr. Hamuda, for having me on this series with the Ask Me Anything. My name is Bryan Castro. Like Dr. Donatello said, I work at the National Alliance for Hispanic Health in Washington, D.C. We are a nonprofit that focuses on health education, health promotion, really to prevent and delay chronic diseases and infectious disease as well, of course, and really promote overall well-being in the different community. And the way we do that is we partner with different organizations on the ground to engage with different communities. So most of the work that we have done is working with community-based organizations, whether they're healthcare providers in their local communities or multi-services organizations that can help people with educational resources, social resources, health resources, and education about health. And so we started working with the All of Us research program as an organization in 2017. I came to the Alliance in 2019, and at that time we were promoting the program, the All of Us research program, which I'll tell you a little bit about with communities so that they could sign up and share their information about their own health. And then in 2020, the information was available to researchers. And so that's how we got connected with Dr. Hamuda to really promote the Research Hub, the information that's available for researchers to use about health information. And so next, I'll talk about the All of Us Research Hub, which is one of those programs that I just mentioned, which is one of the programs that we have here at the Alliance. And then I can talk a little bit more about my background after that. Okay, so the All of Us Research program, and what I can do is I can put the information in the chat so you can look at the website. It's a program from the National Institutes of Health. It launched in 2018, and the idea is to gather health information from 1 million or more people from around the U.S. And this is through survey data, This is through electronic health records, biosamples, so that genetic researchers can look at genetic snippets. They can look at genome sequences, Fitbit data as well. So all of this to really be able to look at different facets of our behaviors, of our environment, of our biology, physiology, and how all of that plays into account and influences our health. Um, and so when I started undergrad, I started at VCU Commonwealth University, studying biology. And at that point, I was mostly interested in genetics and cellular biology. Those were the classes that I was most interested in. I remember taking classes in cancer biology, immunology, and it was just so fascinating. When it took when it came time to work in independent study, as they called it, I was able to intern in a genetics lab, and it was so much fun taking some of the principles that we learned in class and applying them in the lab. Okay, so I see Stephanie Bianco says that a team from all of us came to Chico State a few years ago and collected data from our campus. Excellent. Okay, so you've had some exposure already to all of us. That's great. That's great to hear. Um, so uh, So I was telling you about my underground coursework. I also took statistical classes. Because of the track that I was in was mainly focused on research. So I thought that would be um, the best type of classes to help me with to understand different statistical tests and understanding how we can look at data and what kind of um, uh, inferences we can take from the data. And I started working at VCU. So I went to Virginia Commonwealth University for undergrad, and then I started working at the hospital at VCU Health um, uh, a few years into my undergrad coursework, and I worked as an interpreter. I ended up staying there for 9 years as an interpreter, and it was such a great experience because I got to sit with physicians, different types of nurses, bedside nurses, nurse practitioners, wound care nurses, different types of nurses, different types of therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, um, different types of health professionals, and how they interacted with patients. And so from that, I I was still very interested in the biological sciences and how they influenced our health, but I became very, very interested in uh, community health. And I started seeing, after seeing so many sick people coming to the hospital, I thought health doesn't start in hospitals. It starts out in communities through education and through talking to people about exercise and uh, healthy nutrition, emotional and psychological well-being. And so that's kind of how I pivoted some. And I applied to graduate school also at VCU, and I uh, uh, obtained a master's in public health. At that time, it was just a generalist track, but I did get to study biostats, and I learned how to use SAS, um, to be able to access databases like in Haynes, for example, Burfus, those national data sets that you can look at, like behavior, like health behaviors. In Haynes, for example, was one of my favorites because, like I said, I was interested in uh, uh, like nutrition and intake. I did a project I remember looking at alcohol consumption, looking at, and my interest has always been in Latino populations, so looking at Latino immigrants um, and looking at binge drinking in those communities. So that was pretty interesting. Um, for for our capstone, even though we had been trained on, looking at big data sets and being able to make, inferences on these uh, large amounts of data. I for my capstone for my master's, I decided to actually uh, do implement a survey myself, because I wanted to see the process from start to beginning. And so we started with uh, looking at different instruments that looked at physical activity. And for Latinos, we needed to account for physical activity, not just in exercise, but also like physical labor that you do during work, because a lot of us do. A lot of us Latino who are Latino also are represented in jobs where, for your work you also have physical exertion. So we use some instruments that were previously developed, adapted them, translated them into Spanish, and so I was able to collect, I think it was 130 responses. Um, and I was also able to submit to IRB and go through that process, which it takes time, but I'm glad I did it. It was a very it was a great learning opportunity. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was great to uh, work with IRB, get the approval, uh, go to different community events with different friends that I had made at the master's program, and be able to implement, to collect responses from these surveys. Um, so that was the coursework that I took. Um, right before taking this job in 2019, I became interested in looking. I had gone from uh, this shift to kind of population health and looking at communities and environment and behaviors and things like that. And there was an opportunity that opened up here in the DC area, which was a, I think it was called Health Equity Research Fellow with ORISE. I don't know if you guys have heard of ORISE. And so I did the fellowship with the Health and Human Services Office of Minority Health. And it was really cool because I got to meet a lot of different people who were doing research with different minority communities. And also, I was working with the class portfolio within the Office of Minority Health, which were guidelines that came out from the federal government relating to interpreting services, and other types of culturally appropriate care for patients. So CLASP is culturally and linguistically appropriate services. So I was there for about a year and a half, and then I came here to the Alliance. And so uh, I think I have about 2 more minutes, right, Dr. Donatello? Just wanted to time check.
Up
Okay.
to you.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So just to tie it back in to, what kind of work I do here. Most of the work that I've done here is been program management, working. I told you at the beginning that the Alliance works with different partner organizations in the U.S., and so most of my work has been with All of Us program, working, like I said at the beginning in 2019 when I first started working with organizations on how do we talk to people about this program, All of Us research program, because even for myself, I feel like when I talk to people about research, and even when I hear about research, I want to know what are the immediate effects that I'm getting out of this research. So I think that's something that's been a learning experience for me working with this program. How do we talk to people about a research program when there's so many facets? One of these could be just understanding the nature of research, that it takes a long time, that it takes, that it's iterative, that that you have to come back to it, that you have to come back to questions, you have to reformulate questions and think about how you're collecting data. How are you asking these questions? How is the data being collected? And then also like what the outcomes are, what does that mean for individuals, for different communities? So I think that's been really interesting for me. How do I talk to people, especially for people who want something in the here and the now? People, some communities, not all, that communities that we work with are from underserved in terms of like lower educational status, lower socioeconomic status. And so how do we talk to people who need other types of support, for social services, healthcare services? How do we support them as well in to meet their immediate needs so that they can have conversations about this more long-term um, uh, outcome, right, of research. So I think that's been very interesting for me as a professional. How do we talk to people about research? And I think I've learned to understand that when I talk to people about the All of Us research program, I can plant seeds, and if people are not ready, they can think about it. And as long as I'm raising awareness and telling people about it, maybe they might not join right then, maybe they might not join this program, maybe they'll join another study, because with different pieces from different health professionals, people might start to understand and might think, oh, this is important for Latinos to be represented in research. We talk to different communities and we tell them, if you look at clinical trials, there's an article in Lancet of the Americas which looked at, I think it was like 20 or 30 years of clinical trials here in the US, and they saw that only 6% of participants were Latino. We're at about 19% representation in the US. And so um we're not at representation in terms of the clinical trials that are being done. So we tell people that, and we say, it's important for us to be represented in health research so that the conclusions, the outcomes of those studies can represent us as well. And so in the All of Us research program, which doesn't seek to have a representative sample of the population. It actually wants to oversample uh, 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 different minority populations like Latinos and Asians and African Americans, people with disabilities, sexual gender minorities. Uh, in currently in the data set, we have about 16% of Latinos represented within the data set. Um, let's see. I think I'll stop there, and then I'll rely on Dr. Donatello and Isabel to tell me how we move forward.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Um, oops. So yeah, at this point, if anyone has, direct questions for Bryan, you can put them in chat, you can unmute and ask. Um, you can ask me, I can type them in.
I will ask with a question, actually.
I
Oh, go
okay,
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
okay.
You guys.
Yeah, I just have one quick question. I heard that you work for the alcohol consumption, I mean, related to that, and the data which you have taken from the people, is it from the wearable device or it is from the survey that you are collecting data from the people, or maybe you're asking questions to them or something like that, or it is from the wearable devices? That is my question.
Okay. Thank you so much. And sorry, I didn't see the name pop up on the screen.
It's Apeksha.
Oh, hi, Apeksha. It's good. It's good
Hi.
to hear your voice. Okay. So, yeah, when I reference alcohol consumption in my coursework, the data that I extracted at that time was from NHANES. But
Mhm.
certainly the All of Us program also captures information. So let me put it in the chat. This is the research. So the first link that I put in the chat was for the research program for anybody to look at the website and read about the program and join if they want to. The second one is for people who are interested in accessing the data for research purposes. And so you might be able, so if you look at the data browser, you might be
Mhm.
able to find, let's see, let me put in alcohol as actually, can I share my screen? I don't know if that's a
Yeah,
possibility.
absolutely.
Yeah? Oh, okay. All right, let me try share my screen. Okay. Oh, sorry, I have the questions up here as well. Okay, so the everybody can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the website that I shared with you guys was the Research Hub. This is the general website. And then if you come to the different tools that are used, it'll tell you where the data comes from. And if you want to look at like just snapshots of data, we could look at alcohol. Let's see and then it'll tell us what type of information is available. So we can see that there are um, uh, some information contained in the electronic health records related to alcohol, and then some survey questions as well. So let's take a look. If you look at the lifestyle survey, let's see. There's a question right there. Let's see. So in your entire life, have you had at least one drink of alcohol, not counting taste or sips? And so that's the response there. Pretty general question. And if you look at, if we go back, then we can see, like I said, that was part of the survey questions, but then there are also electronic health record data available as well, available for researchers to look at. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Also, I have another question. Sorry. So are we taking any measures to protect or secure that data? Nowadays, we have blockchains and all those things in medical industry, but before that, was there any technique or any security aspect thing to protect the data?
Yeah, let me stop sharing my screen. Yes, absolutely. So the program has uh, uh, certificates of confidentiality that have been granted from the federal government to protect the data, and this goes over the different types of laws that exist already. And so what we tell people usually is that, nothing is 100%. There are always risks, but that 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 there are great efforts to protect the data in terms of, you know, not being able to identify the specific person. So the website that I was showing you was just aggregate counts of the data, and you can't see any, who is who. Now, for people who want to access this data as researchers and look, and you could see the line by line de-identified
Mhm.
data. There are also protections, even for people who access the data that way. And so, for example, um, the the name has been removed from uh, f- uh, from this data. um, there are two tiers for the data. One is just it's called the registered tier that most researchers have access to. There are data suppression measures um, in for that data tier. And so for example, there are transformations to time, so
Mhm.
that as another measure to try to protect the person's identity. Temporality is maintained for those transformations, but just to try to maintain the person's protect the person's identity. Also, for researchers, they can't uh, uh, use the data. So when you're representing data, there's a rule, for example, that you can't show tables with counts less than 20. It has to be, if it's 20, you can collapse it into other groups, or say that you can't report that group because it's less than 20. So there are different protections. The researchers have to take uh, uh, codes of conduct training before they can have access to the data. Um, so anyways, there's a lot of different protections available for the data. And
Okay.
I see some questions as well.
Next couple questions
Oh.
seem to revolve around job opportunities, depending on different majors. And
Right.
then I really like Jessica's question about, jobs with when individuals have like a physical limitation and data analysis type careers. Personally, I think could be good options for them. But I'd like to hear what you have to say about opportunities in the NIH.
Okay, excellent. So we actually, as part of the network that we have currently with the 15 universities that work with us to promote this program for researchers, we definitely shared different training opportunities that are available. And so I see that Joaquin, I can see that you're a nurse. We actually just heard about a fellowship training program with NIH. I think it was with providers, with physicians, nurse practitioners. There might be a possibility that might be of interest to you. Let me put my email in the chat. Let me see. Uh, okay. And so we can share, and I can share some of what we already have. Um, my boss and I are actually going to Abercoms next week in Phoenix, um, the um, the annual conference for biomedical research with minoritized students. And so we actually have been talking with NIH about different opportunities that we can share there. So I can send an email to Dr. Donatello and Hamuda with some of those opportunities that we've seen, which will include that fellowship that I just mentioned, and also some other ones relating specifically to research for NIH. Last year,
Bryan, sorry, since you're talking about this, I know that you have opportunities also for students, like scholarships while they are a student before they get into the job. You may want to touch on that if you would.
right. So I was gonna say that, and that's a good reminder, Dr. Hamuda, because I was gonna, I had forgotten, but I at the beginning I wanted to not forget about what we call internally the heart grants. These are healthy, the Healthy Americas Research Consortium. And these are grants that we gave last year. There were 10 grants. They were like considered like seed grants, uh, uh, 10 $10,000 grants, so small grants for individual, but mostly they were research teams um, to be able to use all of us data to conduct research. And most of these students were some of them were physicians, some of them were nurses, like nurse researchers. Some of them had like social work background, but were also researchers with that research with the social worker kind of framework. So see, physicians, nurse researchers, social worker researchers. There were also grad students and undergrad students who applied for these grants. Again, I haven't heard yet the final word about these grants. I think it'll be 10 as well this year. So as soon as we know, we will also let you know, and so that you can apply as well. Thank you, Dr. Hamuna. Okay, I know Jessica said that my major is nutrition and food science in the communication option at Chico State. I have a disability with physical limitations. What are my career options? So I think for me, that kind of falls a little bit out of the scope of what I've worked on and kind of my lived experiences. I think what I can do, Jessica, is, part of the research, part of this research, all of us research program consortium, there's an organization that's called the American Association of Health and Disability. I'm not sure if you've worked with them before, if you've heard of them before, and they are doing the same thing that we are. They're engaging with participants to kind of encourage them to participate in the program, but they also have a network of researchers who have disabilities who, maybe you might be interested in talking to them. So I can, if you can drop your email in the chat and I can follow up with you, or you can email me and I can connect you with that group.
Thank you very much.
Of course, absolutely.
Brian, from a perspective of somebody who's working right now, you were a student, what are the skills that you are using the most now in your job?
Right. So I think this is one of the things uh, that I learned here on the job, that I didn't have a lot of previous exposure, which was finances. You know, and it's funny because my boss, Edgar, some of you know him, his background is like banking and finance, so he has a lot of experience with that. I have none. And so when I first started, I had a huge learning curve with, as we worked with different organizations, brainstorming about, Jessica, I saw your email. Thank you. Let me copy it so I can have it in my emails before I forget. Okay, I put it in my email. And as we, it was pretty natural to kind of dip into my previous experiences as an interpreter and in public health, to be able to talk with different contacts about brainstorming for talking about research and how to get to different communities. But the finance part was one that I had to learn a lot about, and it was a huge learning curve. And I'm happy, because now I I don't I still have a lot to learn in terms of budgeting and financial tracking, but I've learned so much. In March it'll be 5 years that I've been here, and I think that's one of the biggest takeaway for me is the finance part, is learning. So if you have an opportunity, I'm not sure exactly what all of you are thinking about, whether you're thinking like a track in academia or industry or like nonprofit. I would highly recommend a course which you can kind of learn about finances and budgeting and things like that, because I think that will be very useful in any uh, location or field that you end up working in.
My understanding is that you work with data a lot. What courses would you advise students to take, and that you mistake and you wish you would have taken to prepare you better for the job? Especially, again, that you're working with data in different aspects.
Yeah, I think one I think for me, the statistics courses were very helpful to understand when you're looking at different types of data, what are the different issues that you can come up with, that you can face. I, like I told you, I took in undergrad, I took basic stats courses for my graduate training. I also took a full year of biostats. And so I feel very comfortable being able to, read a research journal. And, when somebody tells me, the for this population, the odds of them were, this much higher for them facing this, or, whatever the outcome is being described, I can feel pretty confident that I understand the how they came to that conclusion and what it means. But of course, there are other aspects that for me are I think more difficult. And so, for example, I'm working using the All of Us data. We're working with the University of Texas with a professor of mathematics and biostats and her PhD student who is also learning about data science. And so, you know, I, I told you at the beginning that I learned when I was doing graduate school, I learned SAS for the All of Us Research Hub data platform. You have to know either R or Python, and so I didn't know how to use either of those. I've since started slowly learning how to use R, so I think learning a language, and it's hard because I know there are different languages for programming and being able to manipulate data and use it for data analysis. But you know, I'm sure all of you, some of you who are interested in research and pursuing that track are already looking at some of these programs already. But yeah, I think for me, I guess it was just that I took SAS and I learned I think the process of using of writing code for data analysis I think was helpful for me. Unfortunately, I can't use it. Some of the skills are transferable to R, but it's learning a new language, so there's been some friction points there. Um, the PhD student that we're working with at UTEP has been able to um, use his skills with both R and Python. We were looking at this project. We actually just presented the data at the face-to-face here in the DC area for the All of Us research program, and at the Alliance for Data Science conference that just happened in San Antonio the week before. And so uh, that was a learning experience to remember that I told you that the data that is in the All of Us data set is not representative necessarily of US populations. And so to be able to make kind of inferences on the Latino population in the US, we took the data and then we had to use a process called uh, iterative proportional fitting, I think it's called, so that we could, adjust. Yeah, I guess essentially just apply weights to the data so that we can make those national estimates. So anyway, so it was very interesting to kind of see that process, and also know that there are limitations as well, because the tools are very powerful. Um, uh, but this research hub, it's been live since 2020, and so it's still they've worked through several bugs. We had issues with, and again, this is kind of bumping against limits of my knowledge, but those of you who have worked with these different programs might know something about a kernel. A kernel kept dying. We were trying to do the data analysis, and the program would kind of kick us out, and so we had to keep. Oh, I see. Dr. Donatello, can you remind us of what your MPH was? General public health or no? Okay. So yeah, so my MPH was in just a very generalist track in public health. So we took some classes in epidemiology and social and behavioral health. What was the other one? Health policy and research, I think is the name of it. Environmental health. So just kind of a sampling of different of different subfields. And then the iterative proportional fitting allows for smaller sample to be weighted such that it can be generalized to a larger population. Thank you, Dr. Donatello.
Yeah, no problem. It was the MPH, because I went to UCLA for the public health, because I was in biostatistics. And so it's like, you got your MPH or you got yours. I actually got my DRPH, Doctor in Public Health, but it's a DRPH in biostat. They could have, so that's why I was asking about the subfield specifically, because I also had to take classes in the other broader fields. And that's, something that, for the students in the room, when you're looking at grad programs and trying to choose between programs, ones that have kind of this broad reach are definitely worth, or this classes between disciplines is always a nice thing to consider, because then you're ending up having to take classes in another field that you would have not normally ever taken. Like I really enjoyed my environmental health classes because it mixed with my biochem background, and so you get to learn. It's almost like general ed at a graduate level. So.
I certainly agree with that. I mean, I think that again, you know, with the full year of biostats that we had for graduate school and the SAS training, you know, I'm definitely not an expert in biostats, but I think it helped me to understand how we arrive at different types of methodology and also to be a consumer of, you know, when I'm reading different research articles and different methodologies and the results, I can understand how they got to that point, you know, so to be kind of an informed consumer of of uh, of the outcomes of research.
Kind of based on that, I have a question for you. So I'm an MPH student with a concentration in epidemiology right now. And like Robin mentioned, with the MPH being so general, I'm getting so much general information about public health, which I'm really loving. But I'm also wondering how, as someone who's more data science focused, how did you kind of pursue more data science focused things within the realm of public health?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think we were lucky that we were built into our curriculum, even though it was a generalist track, we had to take that full year of the biostats and the full year of the SAS, and we had to, I mean, it was once a week, and we had to, you know, it started with, you know, opening like setting your oh my goodness, this has been so long, like a setting your work directory up and then being able to kind of pull files and open them and being able to do very basic things in SAS and then kind of working our way up and you know being able to kind of create graphs with the data and then being able to then move on to kind of more inferential statistics and being able to use the data that way. So I think I was lucky uh, that we had that built into our curriculum. And I was able to, like I said, I think the most memorable project that I did, which was just a poster presentation, was kind of going into NHANES and looking at it in something that interested me because I think for me, the reason why I arrived at alcohol consumption in Latino population was because, I followed the substance abuse nurse in the hospital. And so working with her and getting at, at uh, it, uh, kind of the alcohol intake behaviors, binge drinking versus, the high amount of drinking throughout the week, um, how that kind of, I don't know, I think for me, I think through my track, through kind of my professional development, having the coursework, but also working a professional job at the same time, which can be hard, was really helpful because it informed my professional practice as an interpreter helped inform some of the questions that I had in class, like the alcohol consumption, for example, or the capstone that I talked about, which wasn't very a big amount of data, but it didn't, my work with family medicine and kind of counseling with nutrition and physical activity kind of help inform that as well. So I think I think everybody's track is different, but having that professional experience and that practice really helped kind of inform some of the questions that I wanted to ask, and I was able to kind of to extract from NHANES, for example, and my mind is escaping some of the other ones. I think Burfus was another one that we were able to go in and extract data, but I don't remember with the specific project.
That's the behavioral risk.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
ERSF. Yeah.
Right.
I know
Right.
that. I know the acronym. I forget what it
Right.
means.
Right. So
Awesome.
yeah, so there you
So-
could find more of like the tobacco, and I think actually that is more fitting for like alcohol too. So it's more of those kinds of behaviors. Yeah.
So looking at time, so it's 1:45. I think we have like maybe time for perhaps one more question for Bryan.
I have a question.
Yep. Oh, hold on. We got one from here.
Well, can I pass it on to you?
They can hear you.
Yeah, okay. So I'm currently in my last semester for my undergrad and I'm under nutrition food management and I love it. And throughout my classes, like I've noticed that There is a mix between marketing, there's a mix between business, agriculture. And it was interesting to take each of those courses, but I think what definitely shined the most for me was like business and economics. So I'm in a current debate of, do I want to follow along with this nutrition degree and take it upon to grad school? Or do I want to take the risk or also the challenge of going into a business or finance more based and centered education? So I don't know any recommendations, or I really have noticed also throughout my courses that I enjoy doing the research and I enjoy being out in the field conducting those tests and stuff. But I also like the data and having all of that information just organized. So I'm conflicted whether I'm truly more interested in the nutrition field or what the data reflects based off of those studies.
Yeah, so I think for me, I just kind of fell into different opportunities, you know, in undergrad. I was thinking I would be interested more in um, you know, going into like maybe academia or something like that. And then just kind of falling into kind of being pushed more towards the community engagement side. I I think that one thing that can help is really trying to seek people and professionals in the fields that you're interested in, and maybe you setting up informational interviews, maybe shadowing, maybe even like something longer, like some kind of internship that can show you, you know, do I want to be in a lab, for example? Do I want to be the person behind the scenes, kind of developing the instruments and getting everything together administratively? Do I want to be the person out talking to people? You know, I think a lot of that you have to kind of figure out as you live it, I think. Um, and and I think one thing that I really learned in the hospital is that, you know, you don't have to pick one or the other, because one of the greatest things of working at a university hospital was that I met, for example, a wound care nurse who you know, ran around the hospital taking care of patients who had wounds. And then and he was also a researcher. He was like one of the top researchers in his field. So he was both on the practice side and he was also a researcher. You know, the same thing with occupational therapists that I met, who was an occupational therapist. She saw some questions that she wanted to ask. She went back to school and she got a PhD. And you know, so I think that there might be ways of kind of using different interests and different skills, um, you know, where it doesn't have to be like just in, I guess, one bucket. You could kind of dabble in different things, I think. Which again, like, I mean, I think for me, it's been interesting that I've been able to work on more kind of project management, administrative side, and also being able to work with the COVID project that I told you about with the UTEP group. Even though I have some limitations with the technical skills, I've been able to kind of bring in some of my knowledge of the All of Us program, the methodology, the questions, the instruments that have been used, also my knowledge of our behaviors of Latinos, which of course aren't 100% for everybody. They're not homogeneous, but to try to explain some of that. So I think it's been interesting to use some different skills for different uh, uh, um, you know, different ends. And I think that too, I think one thing that I've really enjoyed too is qualitative data. And so I know that we've talked about, you know, data science and using big data, and so I really love that part, and being able to kind of use large data sets and being able to draw conclusions. But some of the nuance and some of the perspectives and beliefs, I think you can really get at through qualitative research. I forgot to mention at the beginning, um, oh, oh, sorry.
Oh, I think you might have been a little background noise here. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, okay. No, and I know we're running towards the end, so you can cut me off, but what I was going to say is um, I when in my master's program, we also I worked with a family medicine group, and we went to the Dominican Republic, and I worked with a health psychology student um, using interviews to get at um, uh, perceived barriers to treatment and things that help uh, uh, these participants in this research project relating to diabetes and hypertension care. And so that was really, really telling. And we were able to kind of put a survey together and then implement that survey as well. So I'm a big believer, and I really love mixed methods as well. Just want to put a plug in for that as well. It's so much fun to get information from focus groups and in interviews and try to see, the numbers are great, they're informative, but also to see kind of so that qualitative dimension as well.
Stories. Mhm.
The stories, yeah.
Thank you so very much. So if there's any additional questions that anybody may have, please feel free to, you can send them to me. You can send them to our project email, which is on the Project Fan website. We will be, the session was recorded. We'll be posting it. If you have questions later, I can always pass them to Bryan. Not a problem. So thank you again so much for an hour of your time. Really, really appreciate it. And I guess I hope you have a great rest of the day. If for the also participants in the room, Isabel had put in a link to our equally quick post survey. If you don't mind taking a few minutes, I know we're coming in on one, people have classes and other meetings and stuff, but that would be greatly appreciated. So let me stop.